Hi! Welcome to ACCQ Continuing Professional Education. So pag-uusapan natin ngayon is about cost accounting. So kung napapansin nyo yung mga previous videos, it's about financial accounting. So this time, I'm going to talk about cost accounting. Gaano ba kahalaga ang cost accounting sa isang business? Paano natin makokontrol ang mga types of or classification ng mga costs? So we're going to talk about those elements in cost pati classification after this. Gaano ba kalaga itong cost accounting? Especially sa paggawa ng financial statement. Now, hindi tayo makakagawa ng maayos na financial statement kung wala yung cost data. So, it is also an integral part sa isang business because businesses incur costs. So, that's why kailangan rin ng kailangan nila ma-identify in order to control. So, dito sa pag-uusapan natin, we're going to talk about cost elements and cost classifications. So, we go now to the first one. The first one is cost classified by nature or management function. So, under that is yung manufacturing. So, alam niyo naman sa manufacturing cost, no, yung mga manufacturing, so it is derived from, of course, the manufacturing type of business. So ito kasi yung pinaka-complex na operations, no? More complex than service and merchandise kasi napakaraming elements dito na bago mabuo yung isang produkto. So number one is yung direct materials. So direct materials simply means ito yung mga directly related dun sa produkto. For example, let's take an example, cellphone, no? So wala yung cellphone ko dito naka-charge, no? So yun sana yung gagamitin ko na example, no? Pero let's just imagine may cellphone, no? Yung cellphone, tignan mo yung niya, no? So meron siyang yung bang kung ano nakikita mo doon, those are direct materials. Whatever is visible doon sa cellphone na yon, those can be considered as yung direct materials. Like for example, yung ginagano nag-i-scroll yung parang glass and yung sa takip, no? So those are part of the direct materials. Anything that yung nahawakan mo doon na which are directly related. So these are direct materials. Or another term for direct materials are raw materials. So ayun, so yung mga so yung mga practically lahat, whatever is visible there. Another one is yung direct labor. So this direct labor is yung mga laborers na nagsalpak nun. Sila yung they form yung cellphone na yon. Kasi hindi naman magvo-volt in bigla yun, no? So merong merong nag-assemble. So these are yung mga direct labors. So they are directly related dun sa paggawa ng produkto. And the last cost element sa manufacturing cost is yung factory overhead. Now yung factory overhead, this if you cannot classify it as either direct materials or direct labor, so dito papasok, kumbaga ito yung pinaka tapunan ng mga account na hindi mo ma-classify as either direct materials or direct labor. So in other words, indirect material and indirect labor yung naandun sa factory overhead. So a good example here yung sa halimbawa kung indirect materials na part of the overhead of the let's say the product of the cell phone is yung yung ano ba yung pwedeng natin, yung something na yung bang pwede yung label doon sa cellphone, no, which is not necessarily an integral part of the cell phone because it can exist even without the label, pero kailangan yun because of say for aesthetic purposes, yung mga paganda. So those are part of indirect materials. And of course, kung may pandikit yun, kung dikit yung cellphone, adhesive or what have you, no? So, maaring pwedeng indirect materials yun. Now, as far as indirect labor is concerned dun sa cellphone na yun, ito yung mga, let's say, of course, sa factory ginawa yan. So, just imagine yung factory. So, meron siyang supervisor, merong yung security guard. So these are indirect labor. So hindi naman sila mismong gumagawa ng cellphone na yon. Unless siguro kung naboboard yung security guard, so makikihalo doon, no? So but kidding aside, no, those are indirect labor, yung mga nasabi natin, no? So ito lang, aside from the manufacturing cost, we also have yung mga non-manufacturing cost sa isang manufacturing company, let's say, which is called the period cost, no? Kasi yung kanina is the product cost, yung bang related dun sa product, yung isa naman yung bang kasama dun sa of the cost of doing business. For example, marketing, yan. So those are non-manufacturing costs, pero kailangan yon syempre para mabenta yung produkto. And of course, administrative, no? So those are just part of the whole manufacturing costs. Now, the next classification is the costs according to timing or of recognition. So kanina na pag-usapan natin pahapyaw yung product and period cost. Well, ito na yung pinaka substance ng discussion about product cost. Pag yung product cost is directly related dun sa produkto. So these are called product cost. So yung raw materials, labor, and yung factory overhead, these are cost elements which are called product cost because they're the ones who form part of the product. Whereas yung period cost naman, ito naman yung nai-incur on a periodic basis na hindi sila directly related dun sa product. So example of that is yung sweldo dun sa accountant, no, na hindi naman siya directly related dun sa manufacturing. Also, although he works dun sa manufacturing company, pero hindi siya yung bang hindi naman siya kasama dun sa factory. So kumbaga, those are periodicals, yung bang sumisweldo ng kinsenas katapusan, na including yung sa mga, of course, sa mga admin staff, no? So they're also part of the period cost, no, na kahit walang sometimes kay malakas o mahina man yung production, tuloy-tuloy pa rin yung sweldo nila. So ito pati yung sa mga pati na rin yung sa mga of course yung mga salesman's cost, no? So those are just part of the period cost, and also yung utilities cost, so among others. Let's talk about the next classification on cost, which is cost according to financial statements. So sa financial statements, we know that meron siyang yung first, which is yung statement of financial position. Now, there's a slight difference between yung inventory doon sa as far as yung sa financial statement is concerned, doon sa merchandising and doon sa manufacturing. In a merchandising business, yung inventory nila is captioned as merchandise inventory. So napakasimple kasi buy and sell eh. Yung bang kung ano yung binili nila na inventory, so yun na rin yung ibebenta. Whereas sa manufacturing financial statement, particularly dun sa statement of financial position, it is classified into direct materials inventory, indirect materials inventory and work in process inventory. So meron silang may classification sila. So depende doon sa progress nung manufacturing company as far as inventory is concerned. So meron pa yung finished goods. So again, that's raw materials inventory, yung work in process inventory and finished goods inventory. So these are for manufacturing. So as far as yung other financial statement is concerned, which is yung income statement, yung inventory section nila is very similar yung pag-compute ng cost of goods sold, no? Pero merong konting slight difference which we will show you in a while. So as we can see here, the cost of goods sold for a merchandising company is determined as follows. So beginning merchandise inventory, add purchases, and then that would be your total available for sale, and less ending merchandise inventory. So you will arrive at cost of goods sold. Whereas dito naman sa cost of goods sold for a manufacturing company, this is determined as follows. So mag-umpisa tayo dun sa beginning finished goods inventory, and then we add cost of goods manufactured. Ito yung natapos na. And then this would be the total available for sale. And then we deduct yung ending finished goods inventory. So mapapansin mo, ang dinideduct lang natin para maka-arrive sa cost of goods sold is yung ending finished goods inventory. Not the raw material or not the work in process, but the finished goods inventory. So the cost of goods manufactured contains three elements of product cost, namely direct materials, direct labor, and manufacturing overhead. So let's take up some illustrative statements of merchandising companies. So we can see here that it shows the income statement and current asset section of the statement of financial position for a merchandising company. So we'll take the example of ABC Trading Company income statement for the year ended December 31, 2000 X1. So we have sales of 1 million. So these are just assumed amounts. So we have a cost of goods sold under that, starting with the beginning inventory for 100,000, add purchases for 650,000 for a total goods available for sale of 750,000, ending inventory of 150,000 for a total of for a balance after deducting ending inventory from the goods available for sale of 600,000. And then we deduct 600,000 from the sales to get the gross margin of 400,000. And then after that, i-deduct naman natin yung mga operating expense such as yung selling expenses for 100,000 and administrative expense for 200,000 for a total of 300,000. And then after getting that, we deduct naman dun sa gross margin or gross profit of 400,000. So we arrive at the net income of 100,000. Meantime, ABC Trading Company current asset section of the statement of financial position on December 31, 2000 X1 states there that the cash is 10,000 for the current asset, accounts receivable for 60,000, and you can see that the merchandise inventory that we have obtained from the other statement, which is the income statement for 150,000. This is the ending inventory, which will be the balance of the merchandise inventory on December 31, and of course the prepaid expenses, which are just assumed amounts. So for total current assets of 225,000. So we're now going to show you the illustrative statements of a manufacturing company. So we see here the income statement of XYZ company for the year ended December 31, 2000 X1. So we have sales of 1,500,000. So we deduct from the sales are the cost of goods sold. So let's start with the beginning finished goods inventory. So ito yung ending inventory nung nakaraang period na beginning inventory naman ngayon. Puro finished goods ito. So for 125,000, and then of course, we add there yung cost of goods manufactured, yung manufacture ngayong taon, which is 850,000. So take note that itong goods manufactured, ito finished goods to. So that's why this is ready for sale. So goods available for sale for 975,000, and we deduct the ending finished goods inventory, yung mga hindi na benta for this period. So we have a balance of 800,000. So this is the cost of goods sold, and we deduct that 800,000 from the 1.5 million sales. So in order to arrive at the gross margin or gross profit of 700,000, and then we deduct from the gross profit the operating expense or the period cost of selling expense of 250,000 and administrative expense of 300,000 for a total of 550,000 in order to arrive at the net income of 150,000. Now, we now go to XYZ Company, Statement of Cost of Goods Manufactured. So, ang manufacturing company lang ang merong ganitong cost of goods manufactured, because obviously merchandising, iba naman yung kanilang statement. So, they don't have this. So, we start with direct materials. So, we have direct materials inventory on January 1, 2000 X1 for 30,000. Tapos yung binili nila for the period, yung mga direct materials for 210,000 for a total direct materials available of 240,000. And then from that figure, i-less naman natin yung direct materials inventory on December 31, 2000 X1. Okay, for 15,000. So in order to get the direct materials used, so ito yung nagamit. So for 225,000. And then we add yung direct labor for 250,000. And from the direct labor, idadagdag naman natin, since nakuha na natin yung direct materials used, direct labor, idadagdag naman natin yung manufacturing overhead, which is composed of indirect materials for 35,000, factory utilities of 70,000, factory supervision of 70,000, property taxes on factory equipment of 20,000. Ito yung mga taxes dun sa factory. And then yung factory maintenance and repairs for 20,000. So may kinalaman sa factory ito. And depreciation of plant and equipment for 90,000. Kung mapapansin natin, itong mga manufacturing overhead, these are indirect costs of manufacturing. And so for total manufacturing overhead of 305,000. And from there, i-add natin yung dalawang cost na nakuha natin sa direct materials used and direct labor for a total manufacturing cost of 780,000. And also, i-add natin yung work in process inventory January 1, 2000 X1 of 130,000 in order to arrive dun sa total na 910,000. And from the work in process, ibabawas naman natin yung ending work in process noong December 31, 2000 X1 of 60,000. So meron tayong na manufacture na goods na 850,000. So kung mapapansin natin, itong 850,000, inad natin to from the beginning finished goods inventory. Kaya tayo naka-arrive kanina dun sa goods available for sale of 975,000. So we now go to XYZ Company, current asset section of Statement of Financial Position on December 31, 2000 X1. So we start with the current asset, cash of 15,000, accounts receivable of 100,000, and we also account for the inventory. So ito yung mga sinabi natin na kasama dito sa isang manufacturing company, which are composed of raw materials for 15,000, raw material work in process of 60,000. Ito yung work in process ending na 60,000, so inilagay dito sa balance ng assets, and then finished goods of 175,000. Okay, so for a total of 250,000. And then to add that, yung sa cost, yung prepaid expense of 10,000 for a total current assets of 375,000. Now, finally, we go to the illustrative statements of a service income. So it shows here the income statement of the current asset section of the statement of financial position of a service company. So EFJ Consulting Company. Income statement for the year ended December 31, 2000 X1. So we have revenues, which are composed of fees for professional services for 500,000. So we less direct costs, which are the employees' compensation and fringe benefits for 245,000. So for a total of contribution to indirect cost of 255,000. So makita natin mas simple yung cost structure ng isang service company. And then, bibabawas natin dyan yung mga indirect costs such as yung rent of office facilities, training and research for 20,000, personal recruiting 10,000, professional insurance and litigation for 6,000, and others which are 25,000 or yung miscellaneous, no? So for a total of 91,000. So from there, ililess natin yung 91,000 from the contribution to the indirect cost of 255,000. So we have operating income of 164,000. Now, yung current asset section naman ni EFG Consulting Company, so on December 31, 2000 X1, we have current assets which are composed of cash of 25,000, accounts receivable of 63,000, unbilled services at estimated billable rates of 50,000, and prepaid expenses of 14,000. So it has a total current assets of 152,000. Next classification is cost classification for predicting yung behavior ng cost. So this is just composed of yung dalawa, which is yung variable and fixed cost. So ito yung behavior ng cost, no? So whether it's a variable or fixed or semi-variable or semi-fixed. So pag sinabing variable, ito yung mga cost na nagva-vary. A good example on that is yung sa labor. Of course, iba-iba yung rate ng labor. That's why, kumbaga, dun sa isang manufacturing company, iba-iba rin yung ano nila, yung bang hindi pantay-pantay yung labor cost nila. There are also days na mas kakaunti yung labor, therefore no work nor pay. So kung wala man masyadong production, no? Or yung ano nila, yung bang tumaas yung production nila. So hindi siya fixed. So speaking of fixed, ito naman yung next, which is yung bang regardless of yung kanilang production, if it's within the relevant range, yung kanilang meaning relevant range, yung bang normal capacity nila, no? Kung doon sila yung operation nila, then fixed siya, kumbaga. So a good example of this is yung rent. So nagbabayad yung company ng rent whether it operates at full capacity or not. So this is also yung bang very prevalent ngayong may pandemya. So maraming companies, they are not operating at full capacity. So that's why pero nagbabayad pa rin sila ng mga fixed expenses nila like rent. So those things, no? And yung isa naman yung semi-variables or semi-fixed. So ito yung may element siya ng variable, at the same time may element rin siya ng fixed or mixed cost. A good example on that is yung sa kuryente. So kung mapapansin mo, meron yung kuryente natin, meron siyang element ng variable, hindi siya pantay-pantay, hindi pare-pareho yung billing natin, pero meron rin siyang element ng fixed. The next is cost classified by types of inventory. So dito sa manufacturing company, meron yung sinabi natin kanina, yung raw materials inventory. Ito yung mga inventory na bagong bili pa lang yung so hindi pa siya pumapasok, wala pa siyang kumbaga wala pang naumpisan doon. Another one is yung work in process inventory. So this is also common sa mga manufacturing company, no? So yung in the process of forming yung produkto na yon, yung hindi tapos, ika nga. And then yung next one is yung finished goods inventory, also in a manufacturing company. So ito na yung kumbaga na tapos na ng mga produkto na ready for sale na. And para naman doon sa merchandising, no? Well, it's just simply called merchandise inventory kasi buy and sell yun so as is. So letter F, we have cost classification according to traceability to cost objective. So we have two. So namely yung direct costs which are traceable and separable. So ito yung mga cost na madaling makita doon sa mahanap doon whether sa product, department or unit. Kumbaga directly related doon sa particular na unit or product or department. So the other one is indirect costs, the costs that are not directly or easily traceable to the cost object. So example sa product, department, etc. So ito yung mga indirect costs na hindi directly identified doon sa produkto. So one thing nga doon is yung factory overhead sa product. And the next one is yung cost classification according to managerial influence. So we have controllable cost that is subject to significant influence by particular manager. within the time period under consideration. So ito yung mga controllable cost na meron siyang control, na pwede niyang i-manage, such as yung variable cost. A good example of that is yung sa labor. And of course, yung non-controllable cost, these are costs over which a given manager does not have a significant influence. So maaring ito yung mga common costs, no, na ina-allocate sa buong company. So those may be non-controllable costs, and even yung mga taxes and yung mga iba pang mga non-controllable costs. And we have cost terminologies used for planning and control. We have standard cost. So this is a predetermined cost estimate that should be attained, usually expressed in terms of cost per unit. So we also have the budgeted cost, so used to represent the expected or planned cost for a given period. So for example, a company plans to manufacture 1,000 units of product X, which has a standard cost per unit of 4 pesos, would have a budgeted cost for the period of 4,000 for product X. As 1,000 units times 4. And then the absorption cost. So these are costing method that includes all manufacturing costs. So regardless whether it's fixed or variable. So kasama rito yung direct materials, direct labor, and both variable and fixed manufacturing cost in the cost of a unit of a product. It is also referred as full cost method. Yung isa naman, yung direct cost, a type of product costing where fixed costs are charged against revenue as incurred and are not assigned to specific units of product manufactured. So ito yung mga ipag sinabing direct costing, ang mostly kino-consider lang dun sa produkto is yung variable cost, whereas yung fixed, this is more like a they are considered as yung period cost. And finally, cost classifications for decision making and other analytical purposes. So we have relevant costs. So these are future costs that are different under one decision alternative than under another decision alternative. So meaning itong relevant cost, no, it will make a difference pagka, let's say, may dalawang option, pag pinili mo yung isa, merong meron siyang difference kaysa doon sa the other one. Hindi ba kahit anong piliin mo sa kanila wala ring difference, so indifferent. So that is not relevant cost, no? So kaya nga sinabing relevance, so there should be difference. These are future costs that are different under one decision alternative. So the next one is yung incremental cost. The difference in cost between two or more alternatives in evaluating given alternatives. So ito yung mga these are the additional costs to determine feasibility of this particular alternative. So to be an incremental cost, the cost must be a future cost and be different under various alternatives. So this is similar to relevant cost. So kumbaga hindi pareho yung under two alternatives, hindi pareho yung kalalabasan because of this incremental cost. And of course, the last one is yung sunk cost. So these are past costs that have been incurred and are relevant to a future decision. So a good example here, let's say nakabili ng maraming inventory yung company, and then nagkaroon ng na obsolete yung kanilang inventory. So wala na sila magagawa doon. Those are sunk costs already. Hindi na nila maibebenta yon sa market at market price. And then the other one is yung opportunity cost. So the value of the best alternative forgone as the result of selecting a different use of a resource by choosing a particular strategy. So a good example here is that yung bang may opportunity siya na let's say, for example, just a good example here. Let's say if you are an employee or a professional, so it's either meron kang dalawang jobs na pinagpipilian. So yung isang job is kumbaga nakita mo na meron siyang mas ibang feature kaysa dun sa ibang job. So pinili mo yung, let's say, yung job A over job B. So yung opportunity cost mo is foregoing job B. Yung ano pa yung mga opportunities na makukuha mo had you choose si job B. So yung marginal cost, these are costs associated with the next unit or the next project or incremental cost associated with an additional project as opposed to the next discrete unit. So yung marginal cost, this is common in dun sa mga break even. So pagka once na reach na yung break even point, then for every unit na mabenta, so magkakaroon siya ng kumbaga yung bang margin, no? And dito naman, well, dito naman, of course, cost work. This is also similar to that particular na analogy. So yung bang the next project or incremental cost associated with an additional project. So ito yung kumbaga it makes a difference, no? So ito yung tinatawag ng marginal cost. And then last one is yung value added cost. So these are costs that add value to the product. So this cost results from activities that are necessary to satisfy the requirements of the consumer. Effort should be made to eliminate these costs that do not add value, such as storage and materials handling. So as the title suggests, ito yung value added cost. So it gives value to the product. So kumbaga, ito yung isa sa mga reasons kaya mo siya bibilin, itong value added cost. So let's take up this exercise for Amazing Aluminum Company, which is a manufacturer of recyclable soda cans, had the following inventory balances at the beginning and end of 2000X1. So we have the inventory classification, which is composed of raw materials, work in process, and finished goods. So we have the beginning, or the January 1, 2000X1, amounts of the raw materials for 60,000, for work in process of 120,000, and for finished goods for 150,000 respectively. And on December 31, 2000X1, which is the ending balance for raw materials of 70,000, we have work in process of 115,000, and we have finished goods of 165,000. So during 2000X1, the company purchased 250,000 of raw materials and spent 400,000 on direct labor. Manufacturing overhead costs were as follows. So we have indirect materials for 10,000, indirect labor for 25,000, depreciation on plant and equipment for 100,000, and utilities for 25,000, and others for 30,000. Sales revenue was 1,105,000 for the year. Selling and administrative expenses for the year amounted to 110,000. The firm's tax rate is 40%. So required, first, prepare a schedule of cost of goods manufactured. The next is prepare a schedule of goods sold, cost of goods sold. And the last requirement is prepare an income statement. So we'll go first to the cost of goods manufactured. So we start out with the caption, Amazing Aluminum Company's schedule of cost of goods manufactured for the year ended December 31, 2000X1. So beginning dun sa raw materials nila, yung raw materials nila on January 1, so this is a given for 60,000, and we add the raw materials, purchases of raw materials for 250,000. After that, we arrive at the raw materials available for sale for 310,000, and then we deduct the raw materials ending of 70,000. So we have raw materials use of 240,000, and then we add direct labor of 400,000. And after getting the direct materials and direct labor, i-add naman natin yung manufacturing overhead, which are composed of yung indirect materials na 10,000, indirect labor of 25,000, depreciation on plant and equipment of 100,000, utilities of 25,000, and others for 30,000, for a total manufacturing overhead of 190,000. So i-add natin dun sa total ng direct labor and raw materials used. So we have total manufacturing cost of 830,000. Now, idadagdag naman natin dyan yung work-in-process inventory nung January 1, which is 120,000. So, makukuha natin yung subtotal na 950,000. Now, since natapos yung ano na yan, yung work-in-process inventory nung January 1, which is i-add natin dun sa total manufacturing cost, so, which is 950,000, ibabawas naman natin yung work-in-process inventory nung December, which is 115,000. Ito yung hindi natapos. So, yung total na manufacture, yung nagawa na ready for sale is yung 835,000. Now, we go now to requirement number 2, which is yung Amazing Aluminum Company schedule of cost of goods sold for the year ended December 31, 2000 X1. So, now we start with finished goods inventory for 150,000. So, na-compute natin kanina yon. And after that, i-add natin yung cost of goods manufactured, yung 835,000 na nakuha natin dun sa former computation natin. And then, so we have yung available for sale. So, ito na yung mga natapos na available for sale for 985,000. And then, we deduct yung ending finished goods na 165,000 yung hindi na ibenta. So, we have a cost of goods sold of 820,000. And then we go now to requirement number 3, which is the income statement for the year ended December 31, 2000 X1. So we first plot the sales revenue for 1,105,000. We deduct the cost of goods sold for 820,000 yung na-compute natin dun sa requirement number 2. And then, so we have yung gross margin of 285,000. And from there, we deduct yung mga period costs like yung selling and admin expense for 110,000. So we have yung income before taxes of 175, and we deduct yung income tax expense, which is 40% of income before tax of 175. So that would be 70,000. So we have net income of 105,000. So if you have any questions or comments, you may write your comments in the comment section, and of course you can suggest whatever topics you want to discuss. So subscribe and share. God bless and stay safe.